From the East Texas Sports Network studios, powered by Texas Dairy Queen, a tradition of excellence, the ETSN podcast, where Clint Buckley and Mike Graham they just talk. It's the lowdown on everything high school football in East Texas. And now, Clint Buckley and Mike Graham.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Week 2 edition of the ETSN.fm podcast. Loads to talk about this week. Hi, I'm Clint Buckley, and I'm joined as always by Mike Graham. We survived Week 1, Mike.
Yeah, we saw a lot of good games in Week 1 and learned quite a bit about a lot of the teams around here. I'm excited to dive into it today.
Well, let's get right to it. Let's first talk about what we saw last week, some Week 1 impressions. And I guess we got to start with the first game of the season last week on Thursday night, Gilmer and Liberty Ilo. You know, even though Liberty Ilo ends up on the losing end, 50-45, I came away really impressed by LE and Gilmer too. Not to mention the Buckeyes, defending state champs. They go out and win against a really good team in Week 1 with a lot of new players, a new head coach. I think both have a chance to be legitimate state title contenders this season.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. Gilmer, we had a lot of questions about their offense, and hanging 50 points on a defense as good as Liberty Ilo's is a great sign of things to come for that program. And then Liberty Ilo obviously comes up on the losing side, but showed a lot of good things, especially against Gilmer's vaunted defense.
Yeah, it was a lot better than last year's performance. I think it was like 55-19 or something like that in favor of Gilmer. So big step forward for Liberty Ilo. We expect them to have a great season. Another Week 1 impression that it was the fact that both Tyler public high schools kind of went down in a kind of a surprising fashion. I mean, John Tyler loses 35-17 to Plano. We had a feeling it could be a close game, but we just didn't expect JT to struggle so much on offense.
Yeah, the report and from what I read on the game and just what our photographer said was just kind of a disjointed performance all around, especially on the offensive side, and you can kind of expect that with some newcomers, especially Bryson Smith at quarterback. I'm excited to see how they bounce back because they've got a whale of a game this week, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But not too concerned with the performance, but there's definitely room to grow.
Now, what did we say last week about Tyler Lee? We said if they can find any shred, any semblance of defense, we thought that they had a chance to be really special this season. And unfortunately for the Red Raiders, the defense did not show up in Week 1 last week. They gave up 59 points and a 59-35 loss to Keller Fossil Ridge. Not off to a good start defensively for Lee.
Yeah, no kidding, and that was the thing. They have such a powerful offense, but the defense has got to be there to support them and not make them work through the entire game because it's hard to hit on 100%. And when you give up 59 points, your offense has to hit on 100% of its possessions.
It wasn't a great day for quarterback Zach Hall. I think he was only 5 of 16, but we found out later that he may have been suffering from some flu-like symptoms that may have impacted his performance. But still, Lee goes out there and they score 35 points. They put up over 500 yards of offense, which is close to what they did a season ago. I think they averaged a little more than 40 points a game last year, but they were well over 500 yards per game as an offense. The defense just needs to come around for them to get it together. Longview and Lufkin, that was a game I was at last Friday night, and boy, it was a great game. It was a lot different than the game I saw the night before between Gilmer and Liberty Ilo. There wasn't a whole lot of points to be spread around in that one. It was kind of a good old-fashioned East Texas slugfest between two pretty good defenses, I thought. Both defenses played well, Longview and Lufkin. And I think that was the difference in the game and kind of tilted the game in Longview's favor was their defense. I mean, they had 2 turnovers back-to-back in the third quarter that could have really proven costly for the Lobos, but their defense tightened up. They were able to hold Lufkin scoreless off those 2 turnovers, and ultimately their running game, which has been a staple at Longview for years, was able to carry them to victory. Tylen Miller was a man on their 15-play game-winning drive. Had 10 rushes on that drive, including the go-ahead 20-yard touchdown run with about 4.5 minutes to play. Lufkin, to their credit, they got a young offensive group, mostly juniors and sophomores. They go all the way down to the field. They score with 34 seconds left. And instead of going for 2, like Longview had done to them in the playoffs a season ago and won that game 1 point, Lufkin decided to go for the tie and maybe take their chances in overtime. But unfortunately for Lufkin, Amaron Dean from Longview comes up with a big block on the point-after attempt, and that's the difference in the game. Longview wins 21-20. Great game. And I feel like Lufkin showed me a thing or two. With them being as young as they are, especially on offense, for them to kind of hang around in that game and have some big plays made by their sophomores and junior players, I think the future is going to be bright for Lufkin.
Yeah, I think the best news for both teams is that they're tailor-made to handle games like that. You're not expecting your PAT to be blocked. I was impressed with Lufkin's offense as well, for as young as they are. I expect big things from both these teams going forward.
And one more school we want to hit on real quick before we get into Week 2 action. How about the Gladewater Bears? A lot of people may have forgotten about them coming into the season because they don't have Dalen Mack anymore. And while Dalen was a terrific player, you and I both have seen him in action. We knew that Gladewater had more players than just Dalen on last year's group, and they had a bunch of them coming back. And, boy, they laid it on Dangerfield last week, 56-20.
That's right, and Dangerfield is a program still reeling from last year's winless campaign. But when you're Gladewater, you looked at what they had returning, especially on in the offensive skill position. I mean, 3 key running backs, probably more depth emerged over the offseason, and they put it on. And that's a good sign for things to come for those guys. I mean, if you're hanging 56 points on Dangerfield, you're probably going to fare pretty well in Class 4A.
Absolutely. Well, Week 1 is officially in the books. Time to move ahead and look forward to Week 2. We've got some games that we want to talk about real quick, and 3 of them actually occur in the same venue, Tyler's Rose Stadium, and that all gets underway Thursday with Chapel Hill against White House, 2 Lake Tyler rivals, some Smith County bad blood between Chapel Hill and White House. This game is historically a very high-scoring affair, but what's interesting about this one is neither offense played very well last week.
No, I mean, White House led the way with 20 points. When you look at Chapel Hill and White House head-to-head, and pretty much, I mean, they really lost that game. I mean, 48-7 because Texas High caught off the Dogs late. So there's definitely something to work on. And then you've got Chapel Hill, who got shut out by Lindale, which snapped a 110-game streak of at least scoring points.
Right.
I mean, that's a hard one to swallow for Chapel Hill. So they're going to be trying to bounce back in this game, obviously. And I think it's a big one for both teams. You don't want to be the coach to have to reinflate your team after an 0-2 start, especially against your key rival.
Not at all. And I will say this about these two teams. A similar circumstance happened with Chapel Hill at this point of the season last year. They lose the season opener to Lindale, only put up 17 points. But then they go into that game against White House, and they play pretty well. I think they put up 34 points, and they're in the game in the fourth quarter, which is all you can really ask for in a big game like this. And White House, I mean, how long have they been East Texas's most prolific offense? I mean, they've had great offensive teams through the years, over the last decade plus, and you don't get to that point, that level of consistency, by stringing together back-to-back subpar offensive performances. So I would expect both Chapel Hill and White House to be much better on the offensive side of the ball come Thursday night. We'll both be there.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited about that game. It's going to be my first time to see the Lake Show, and I'm expecting both teams to show signs of improvement, or else it could be a long season for them.
The next night at Rose Stadium, we have Lufkin and Lee. We just talked briefly about both of those two schools. Both disappointing losses to begin the season. Lufkin was right there, lose by a point. Lee, their defense just has to be better. I mean, that's just plain and simple. You're not going to win too many games when you're giving up 40, 50 points per week. I think a key matchup in this game will be Lee's rush defense against Lufkin's running game, because even though the Panthers have a game under their belt, the young, skill position players, the quarterback's a junior, a couple of the wide receivers are sophomores. They got another junior at a receiver. I mean, until those guys kind of settle down, I think Lufkin's going to try to establish the running game and take some pressure off of quarterback Cordell Rogers and his receiving core. And last week, Ellis Jackson, the senior running back, had a big night against Longview, which is not easy to do against that defense. 17 carries, I believe, almost 160 yards on the ground. He's not very big, but he makes up for that because he runs really hard and he finds the holes. And I think for Lee to really have a chance in this game, their defensive front against Lufkin's run game is going to have to come up big, because if you take away the run game, I think that puts a whole lot of pressure on Lufkin's young skill players on offense to make something happen. What do you think?
I think you've said everything. I think that Lufkin's running game is the game changer in this one, because when the roles are reversed, you have strength versus strength defense of Lufkin versus the powerful offense of Tyler Lee. So, when you look at
You got to figure that that's going to even itself out.
Exactly. And I'd say that at this point, based on what Lee showed last week, the Lufkin's offense probably has a little bit of edge, and that could be the difference in the game. Yeah,
for sure. And then the next night, Saturday night, back at Rose Stadium, it's Longview and John Tyler. These are two longtime rivals. You'll be in attendance for this one Saturday night. It should be a lot of fun. Longview coming off an emotional, thrilling 1-point victory, as we mentioned, over Lufkin last week. They come to Tyler, where they have a long winning streak at Rose Stadium between Lee and John Tyler. They've won several times over the last decade or so in Tyler. It's a long winning streak that they've got going on, and John Tyler needs to be better, obviously, this week in order to keep up with Longview, which they had some week 1 mistakes last week, but overall a pretty nice performance all the way around. So JT, they have to come with it this week.
Yeah, and I think the funny thing about this one is Longview has scheduled 2 teams that are probably going to be its Class 5A Division I bi-district opponent, either drawing Lufkin or John Tyler, just based on all 3 schools' sizes. So it's a statement game for things to come, and Longview wants to avenge a loss that they suffered to John Tyler at home last year.
Yep, that's true. It should be a lot of fun, and that game kicks off Saturday night at Rose Stadium. One more game we want to get to this week, and this sounds like all kinds of fun. Mike, you're going to go up to you're going to leave the state on Friday night for this one. It's the border war between Texas and Arkansas High.
Really looking forward to this one. I've heard about it all my life, and I've never had an opportunity to go out there and see it. Obviously, the border divides the town in half, and there's a lot of state pride in the game. It's kind of like a college game. In fact, I'm thinking that if they moved this game to like a Wednesday night when they weren't competing with colleges, that it could attract a lot of Texas and Arkansas eyeballs on the game.
For sure, yeah.
And for Texas High, there's a lot to prove in this one as well. Lost in overtime to Arkansas High last year.
Snapped a long winning streak over Arkansas.
Yeah, it was a crushing loss for them. And they're going to deal with some rule changes up there. Like, I don't think you can return balls out of the end zone. I think there's a mandatory water break. They play federation rules. So a couple of things to keep an eye on, but I think they're built, and they have to have an awful lot of confidence after last week's win against White House. That was impressive. And for Arkansas High, this is their season opener. The Arkansas high schools don't open until this week.
So do we maybe give an edge to Texas High simply because they have a full game under their belt?
I think so, and they're a bigger school.
And they've got revenge to play for.
Exactly.
So that ought to be good. We're looking forward to an exciting week 2 of action. We also want to mention our ETSN.fm offensive and defensive players of the week. First up, the offensive side of the ball. How about Alto quarterback Keenan Johnson last week against Crockett? 360 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns in Alto's 60-33 season-opening win over Crockett. We heard awful lot about Keenan Johnson last year, and it seems like he's off to another good start this season.
Yeah, kind of feel guilty because maybe he's going to put up higher numbers as the season progresses, and we'll have to weigh, we've already given it to him. Should we do it again?
Yeah.
My first exposure to East Texas football was really Reginald Davis in Tenaha when I was covering Texas Tech. And
very similar athletes.
Commit to Tech. Yeah, just pound for pound game changers. Reginald obviously had a little bit more size, and at this stage in the game was a little bit more attractive to the higher levels of college football. But Keenan's got some offers, and I'm sure he's going to get more in regards to how they can both take over a game, and that's something that Alto's got to be excited about moving forward this season.
So congratulations to Keenan Johnson, and now our defensive player of the week, Amron Dean from Longview.
Yeah, Amron, and you got to see him in person. He was our defensive backs MVP at the ETSN.
That's right.
Plus APEC football recruiting combine, and really stepped up in that game. I mean, in a 21-20 game, every play counts, and he came up with 2 big ones. Not only did he get that blocked PAT, but he also ended a Lufkin drive in the red zone with an interception at the 8-yard line.
Yeah, and like you said, in a 1-point game, plays like that are magnified even more.
That's right, and gave his team a chance to extend what was at that point a 14-7 lead with his interception. So a lot of good things from him, and that whole secondary looks promising.
Oh yeah, they look great. So congratulations to Keenan Johnson from Alto and Amron Dean from Longview, our Week 1 ETSN.fm and Dairy Queen offensive and defensive players of the week. Well, we're about out of time this week. If you have any questions or comments for us, please hit us up on Twitter. I'm at Clint Buckley, and Mike, you are?
I'm Mike_ETSN.
All right, so everyone have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you again next week.